about them Irish?
I can't take it anymore. I need a national championship.
This is the Four Horsemen podcast.
You know, the luck of the Irish is good forever, but a Trojan is only good once. Welcome to USC week. It's rivalry week. I'm here with Steve, and I'm also here with a good friend of mine, Evan Scrimshaw, another Canadian. For once, we'll have more Canadians than Americans on the show. We met at university in Ottawa. He's a huge college football fan. He does a lot of support for our podcast, so we're so glad to have him on. Evan, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Just honored to be this week's to be on the pod this week. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, that's great. Should we give the disclaimer of your loyalties now?
Yeah, why not? I am a Notre Dame fan. I wish them well, but I am not particularly. I am a Florida Gators fan, University of Florida Gators fan first and foremost. But I mean, I don't think we have ever played you guys, so I can cheer for Notre Dame full well, and the confidence that the chances that we ended up in a playoff game against each other is vanishingly small. And
if you don't mind me asking, how did you become a Gators fan? If you can kind of summarize that real quick.
I have family friends from when my mother lived in Florida who live 15 minutes from the Florida Gators campus.
Awesome. So, and did Tim Tebow help at all?
Yeah, no, my formative Gators moment was the Chris Leak, Tim Tebow split quarterback year where they won the championship over Ohio State in 2006. So
good. Yeah. We don't really like the Buckeyes too much anyway.
Nah.
And we don't like to remember 2006 either.
Ooh, sorry about that, guys. Didn't mean to.
Anytime you say 2000 and Notre Dame fans, I'll automatically start crying. All right. We're so glad to have everyone back here this week. Recording a little later, but I'm really excited to get into it. Bowling Green, huge game for the Irish, which I don't think any of us three watched live. I know you PVR'd it, Evan. I watched it the next day. Steve might have got some of it at the golf course. But big win, 52-0. It's our first shutout since Michigan 2014, where Notre Dame had rightfully won 37-0, despite what the score says at the end of the game. Thoughts on the game, Steve?
They are who we thought they were. I don't know. It's just a pathetic team. Brian Van Gorder. I mean, thanks for playing, I suppose. Pretty much what was expected. I mean, what did we say? I said specifically 66-3 or 63-3 rather, and our defense was 3 points better than what I anticipated. So I'm sure our offense could have poured it on if they wanted to. They kind of scaled back. Obviously, Jurkovich came in, and so did I think Clark even saw a series or so, but pretty much expected. And most importantly, I guess my foremost thought is Notre Dame blew out a team that they should have blown out. Something that, speaking of the 2000 and something, that's something that team, those teams never really accomplished. They always found a way to make a game tight when it should have never been. So should have blown them out. Did blow them out. No real injuries to that came into play. So get healthy. Get reps for younger guys, especially K-Ham, and overall, woohoo!
Yeah, I took 69-6. I forgot. I totally didn't anticipate the fact that the offense wouldn't be trying as soon as they kind of put in the backups. Like, Clark was kind of running the ball for the one drive he was in. Like, they didn't even try to pass it. So yeah, it was kind of what we thought, a big blowout. We saw that in the advanced metrics of Bowling Green, that they were just awful. The way I'd like to put it out there is this was a game to get the wrinkles out of Ian Book's game. This was just about getting Ian Book on track.
Just to interject you very quickly, I do have some more stats that I actually was keeping track of when I was watching the game. So we'll get into that shortly, but please take the lead.
Yeah, no, it was just you could see they were just trying to find different kind of routes that would work for him, getting him to see the field, to be confident, to use his feet. Just all around, it's an Ian Book game. You could tell going in. Even Kelly could tell this is going to be a game about just kinking out the ranks, getting ready for a big rivalry week. So I'll just kind of give you the quick breakdown, box score basically of the game. Notre Dame out-yarded, I don't know if that's the way you say it, Bowling Green 513 to 228, 340 passing yards for the Irish, 233 on the ground. Big one, Notre Dame averaged 6.9 yards per rush, which is, I think, the first game in a while that's a decent number. Bowling Green only got 2.8 on a rush. One turnover for Bowling Green, none for Notre Dame. The turnover battle has been a really big thing this year for the Irish. And one thing I'd like to point out, because we've given them a lot of shit for it, is Notre Dame went 8 for 11 on third down. That's amazing, considering they had one of the worst third down efficiencies in college football to go 8 for 11. I mean, against a team that doesn't really belong, that would probably lose to a Texas high school, but still. Sorry, I got distracted by the dog. For those who can't see, Steve has a dog with him, and it's adorable. So basically, pretty good game for Notre Dame. The score line reflects exactly what we saw. Evan, I know you took some notes. Unfortunately, you had to do this for Bowling Green if you were coming on for USC week. So what did you see?
I saw so I'm a big golf fan. I know Steve was golfing this weekend. It's the golfer who plays the really easy tournament 2 weeks before a major. I'm not going to win this week. It's fine. It doesn't really matter. I want to get into form for when I'm playing the real competition, USC this week. They did everything that they wanted to do. They ran the ball well. They did what they're supposed to do against a team of the utter lack of quality of Bowling Green. They played the game they were supposed to play, and they did it well. Book was substantially better. He is I saw a lot of less happy feet with him, which was something that you guys talked about last week, and I don't want to say I was impressed in the sense that this is what Ian Book is supposed to be doing, but it's still good that he's playing the way he's supposed to play. This isn't, you're 30-point favorites or whatever you were and you win by 17. It's you're 30-point favorites or whatever they were and you win by 52. The defense was amazing, and while Bowling Green isn't good, it's still really hard to shut out a team in college football. So I was overall really happy if I'm a Notre Dame fan, I come out of that week really just thoroughly happy.
Yeah, and I think I like that you brought up the cover part, because I think Notre Dame, depending on how you got the Louisville line, has covered every game this year. I got Louisville line at a bad line where they didn't cover, but they were right around that mark. But New Mexico, Georgia, UVA, and now Bowling Green, Notre Dame has covered the spread in every game. And we had said on the podcast, good teams win, great teams cover. So yeah, no, it's some good thoughts. Did you see anything else in the game, or was it just kind of Ian Book settling in?
The defense is exactly as good as people who like Notre Dame want to think it is. It is elite championship level defense. They did what they were supposed to do against UVA. They did what they were supposed to do against Georgia. But they are just the elite defense that can keep Notre Dame in games even when Book isn't playing amazing, and that's the thing you need sometimes. You need the ability that if Book throws up a stinker against Duke or Pitt or Navy, I'm not saying he will, but if, that defense can win them a game, and that's a really important thing in the grind of a college football season.
Yeah, well said. I think that's exactly it. A lot to look forward to. Or a lot of positives to take away, at least from the game. As you said, shutting out a team is really hard in college football. That defense has really been settling in week by week. The rushing yards allowed per game has been dropping, especially per attempt. So it's good all around. I think this was a perfect tune-up game. You gave a good golf analogy. I mean, I can give a boxing analogy. You fight kind of a no-name before, as you're building up somebody, or before a big fight. So, Steve, anything else before we go on to the Four Horsemen?
just to quickly get into what I saw in regards to every single third down, I had a note in my phone, and I was like, all right, what's the down and distance and what happened? So the first third down was 3rd and 6. Ian Book drops back, feels some pressure, scrambles, and it basically played out as a draw, essentially, gain of 2, so stop short of the line, they have to punt. Happens once, all right, not the end of the world. The very next third down, it was 3rd and 1. And surprisingly enough, Bookie threw a back shoulder throw, maybe about 10 to 15 yard range to Javon McKinley, who makes the catch, first down. Very next play was the touchdown pass to Tommy Tremble. So, you're keeping the plays, you're extending drives, keeping the plays alive, and then, it's ending in points. Always a good sign. The next third down was a 3rd and 3 pass. Play action, that he just flicks the ball over to Cole Kmet. I think it was a 2-yard pass, but Cole Kmet goes for 7. The very next play is Chase Claypool's first touchdown. On his next third down, it was 3rd and 1, another play action pass to a tight end for a first down. And 3rd and 6, incomplete. And then 3rd and 16 was the play he extended when they were only rushing 3 and dropped 8, finds McKinley in the corner for the touchdown. Those were the plays that I saw in particular, and there might have been more third downs after that, but the game was like very much in the bag. I think it was at least 35-0 at that point. So in the time of the game that it mattered, at the very least, before I got a little bit too drunk at the bar I was at down in South Carolina, Ian Book was 4 for 6 on third down with the touchdown pass, and he kept the chains moving. This was something that we diagnosed we came up with his prognosis last week or 2 weeks ago in regards to his third down woes. So inferior opponent, it is a tune-up game. It is grinding on the golf range and making sure that you have everything just put in place so that way when the real game comes, which will be this upcoming Saturday, you have everything like a well-oiled machine. So it was good to see him stay in there, make the throws. I like the play calling a lot. Pretty much we did what we were supposed to do, kind of just going back to my original opening statement.
Yeah, no, well said. If I can kind of pause for a moment, something that's so great about doing a podcast is the reach that we get to have, and using Anchor, the software or the platform that we're on, we can kind of see where people listen from. So I just like to give a shout out to the listeners across the pond, across the world, really. We have some listeners in Ireland, in the UK. In Australia, and even in South Korea, among others. We even had a listener in Sweden at some point. So just a shout out to all you guys. Thank you for tuning in. It's really great that we could reach just beyond our backyard. So that being said, let's get into the 4 Horsemen. And I want Evan's 4 Horsemen first because I have a feeling he's going to make Steve really, really happy.
I'm going to make Steve really happy, and I'm going to make you really happy because my 4 Horsemen, 4-1 or 1-4? I don't know how do you...
4-1, I guess. I think that's it doesn't really matter.
Okay, 4 Chase Claypool, 2 touchdowns, all around great game. Got a shout out my Canadian. Love Chase Claypool. Definitely an NFL talent. I don't know how high, but he's definitely an NFL talent. 3, Jameer Jones. Great game on defense. Came up with, I think it was two tackles for loss. Was wreaking havoc all game on the defensive line. Amazing game from him. 2, Ian Book. I mean, he was exemplary. I don't need to go on and on and on about him.
Oh, wow.
You put him I'm putting him number 1. Phil Jerkovich. What a game. 5 for 7, 79 yards. Touchdown, I think a QBR of 98.4 from memory. It was either
97.9.
I was going to say I couldn't remember. I couldn't keep Ian Book's and Phil Jerkovich's extremely high QBRs straight in my head. But man, oh man, I have a hot take which makes sense here. Phil Jerkovich will lead the Notre Dame Fighting Irish to a victory in the college football playoffs while at Notre Dame.
I can't wait. I don't care what year it is as long as that happens.
That's always been my long-standing theory, because and that is why I literally call him the chosen one, because he is the one that's going to get us over the hump, and hopefully that hump has gotten over this year, by the way. But let's not get too out ahead of our skis. But thank you very much, Evan, for the vote of confidence in my beautiful baby boy.
I mean, when he plays as well as he did, like there's nothing I can do about it. Just ride the train of truth.
Stop! You're making me blush.
I do know the audience to which I'm currently speaking.
Yeah, that you do. So, Dylan, how about you? You give us your horseman.
Sure. I went number 4, Javon McKinley. Another big game for him. He's been a little inconsistent this year, but when he shows up, he shows up. He had 5 receptions, 104 yards, which averaged out for 20.8, and he got a touchdown. I visibly recall, which is huge because I have a bad memory these days. I say that as if I'm not, in my early 20s. He had a few great catches, shoulder throws from Book that he just caught, kind of dominated the ball at the point of attack. And then he's a yak monster, right? He runs the ball after the catch really well. I would like for them to get him involved more in the game, especially against big teams, because he was kind of gone in the Georgia game. If he kind of shows up, he can be a monster. You can use him in the red zone. You can do a lot with him. And he blocks, I would assume, well, given how big he is. 3, I went with Phil Jerkovich. I have no idea how to pronounce his name. I don't think anybody does. Evan listed the stats excellently. I would add to that he averaged 11.3 yards per attempt, which of course is amazing. And he had 4 rushing attempts for 42 yards, which averaged out for 10.5. He was just really lethal. I mean, I hate it when commentators call white quarterbacks sneaky athletic. You see that a lot. But he's sneaky athletic. Like, that kid can run for a big boy. Like, he's 6'5", and then he just kind of runs the ball really well. Like, not Tim Tebow well, but like he can move like that. That's an element of his game that we thought Book had, but we don't really see Book use it. Jerkovic was ready to run at any moment. So that was good to see from him, that he's got that dimension to his game. He had one throw that was awful, but the rest were pretty spot on. Playing Bowling Green helped, but hopefully he can build on this, because then confidence in quarterbacks, it goes hand in hand. 2, I went with Ian Book. He was fantastic. 80% on his throws, 13.1 yards per attempt, which again, fantastic. We've been harping on him to get the ball further down the field. He had 5 touchdowns and a QBR of 98.4. Just, that's insane. It is Bowling Green, keep that in mind. But to get the wrinkles out of his game is exactly what we need. And my first horseman, this is a little bit of a cheat, but I went with the offensive line as a unit. None of this would have been possible without them. Book and Jerkovic combined for 340 passing yards. We got 223 on the ground, and they gave up no sacks. Obviously, that's not wholly attributed to them, but the fact that I'm sure you guys noticed, Ian Book had so much time in the pocket to throw the ball, and he was just hitting open receivers. The running backs were moving the ball well. All of them were running it well. And it's just, I think the offensive line as a whole really just dominated. You could tell they were bigger. They were more physical. And we're going to need them going forward too, especially against Michigan. We'll get to that SCUM program later. And that's it for me. What about you, Steve?
Yeah, thank you. I'm not going to really rehearse the stats, because you guys had covered that entirely. Well, there's only one stat line I do want to give. So the first horseman, Bookie, beautiful game, love him. Claypool is my second horseman. 2 touchdowns, just doing what he does. And then obviously Javon McKinley had a big day as well. Again, exactly as you pointed out. Would love to see that consistency start to break through in the bigger games against tougher opponents. But yeah, I mean, he performed when the time came, so that's good. And then my fourth horseman, I also kind of cheated here, and I did go with the unit. I just went on the other side of the ball, and just in the entire defensive unit. I mean, we gave up 228 yards. I'm sure a bunch of those were in garbage time, and the game was over by halftime. We had 2 sacks, an interception. The interception should have just been batted down, but whatever. We'll take the turnover margin. 8 tackles for loss on the day by the defensive line and the front seven. And I'm sure Aloy Gilman probably came in and killed somebody as well. I just didn't see it. And then 7 QB hurries. And I'm pretty sure we did block a kick. Did we not?
We did, yeah.
Yeah. So all things considered, I mean, again, exactly as Evan had alluded to at the beginning of the game, beginning of the podcast. This is a NFL, a playoff caliber defense. If they play like this, and to be honest, I don't even think they give up 23 points against Georgia if we were a little bit more efficient on offense. But let's not harp on the past. Let's focus on the future. And this defense is absolutely phenomenal. So yeah, it's pretty much that's what I had for the Horsemen.
Yeah, absolutely. They're really coming into their own. I know a lot of the advanced stats are good on Notre Dame, but not great yet. And I think that keeps improving as we go along. All right, now we're going to move on to everybody's favorite new segment, Juice in My Nuts. Let's start with our guest, Evan, who definitely approved this term in pre-screening before we brought this to the pod a couple weeks ago. What was your Juice in My Nuts moment?
So 2 things. And I know I'm slightly cheating, but one, when I checked the score of the Notre Dame game, because I was out Saturday, so when I checked and saw it was 52-0, and I realized that I would have a very easy record on the Bowling Green section. But Djurkovic's touchdown. It was just a sort of like clarifying moment. It was a really good moment, and it was just like everything that's sort of been invested in Djurkovic in terms of hope and potential was just sort of shown in that moment, and it really is proof that no matter what happens with Book, if, God forbid something happens in an injury, if he has to sort of pull a Tua or pull a Jalen Hurts in a game because Book just didn't have it, Djurkovic can step up to the plate and do it, and that was my juice in my nuts moment.
Fair enough. Steve?
I'm going to let you go first because I have an asshole one to go through.
Oh, that's fine. Mine's kind of a cheat one, too, and mine's kind of an asshole one, too. I wonder if we picked the same thing. Mine is when it was over. That was it. As soon as USC was officially the next opponent, that put the juice in my nuts. I am ready for the Trojans. I couldn't give a fuck about Bowling Green. As soon as that game officially hit 0-0, USC was next, and that's what put the juice in my nuts.
So I think mine makes me a little bit more of an asshole here. So my juice in my nuts moment did not come from Saturday, believe it or not. It came from Sunday. And Evan, I'm not sure. I know you mentioned that you are a golfer, so you probably recognize this landmark right here. So I spent my weekend. Let me preserve bandwidth. Spent my weekend down on Hilton Head Island on a golf trip, not a vacation. There's a distinct difference. And I was with a couple of golf buddies, and we were at the Sea Pines Resort down in Hilton Head, where we played a couple of rounds throughout the weekend, 5 total rounds, ending ultimately on Sunday with Harbor Town Golf Links, which is where they play the RBC Heritage each year, which is the week after the Masters. It's been my bucket list course for literally since 2011, when I saw Brandt Snedeker win the tournament there live. So the juice in my nuts moment came when I was on the 18th tee box, and it's absolutely iconic. If you look up Harbor Town Golf Links 18th hole, you will see that it is just a absolutely stunning view. And I pulled out my driver, and I was having some trouble from time to time throughout the day, kind of hooking it every once in a while. But I stayed down on the ball and absolutely fucking spanked a drive dead straight about 300 yards into the wind. It was beautiful. I ended up chunking my next shot. It was a 7-iron that went out of bounds, and it rolled about 11 feet, and I totally screwed everything up. But the juice in my nuts moment was, in fact, my drive on 18 on the most iconic hole that's been the background of my phone for about 2 years now. So that was the best moment from my Notre Dame weekend against Bowling Green.
Quickly before I move on, I bet golf occasionally, and I actually have won money at the Heritage once. It was the year Brandon Grace won. He was 40-1 to win, and paid for a nice bit of my next year's college university tuition.
Nice. I mean, I'll tell you what. If you ever have an opportunity to get there, I don't care if you have to sell crack to be able to get down there. It is one. It was the most absolutely stunning experience I've ever had. So 10 out of 10 recommend.
Yeah, no, Harbortown's amazing.
that was good. Crack and golf. I think I'd like to go down there
sometimes
too.
are synonymous.
Of course. I'm sure we have a lot of both crack addicts and golfers in our audience. So you hit two key demographics there, guys. I think we should head into a section that's teed up for our guest today. As he said, he's a Florida Gators fan. So what he can do is provide us an SEC perspective because although we are homers, it is good to keep an eye on what's going around college football and how it can affect Notre Dame getting into the playoff. So Evan, I will give you the floor to give us your USC landscape.
My SEC landscape, not my USC landscape. We'll get there later.
Yeah, there's too many C's. Thank you.
So the SEC, you're looking at 4 undefeated teams right now: LSU, Florida, Georgia, and Alabama. Alabama has a tough game this week at Texas A&M. Florida and LSU are playing this week at Death Valley, so there's no way both those teams will be undefeated. But from an Notre Dame perspective, the thing that you want is you want all of the teams that have to play Georgia to do as well as humanly possible, so that if Georgia beats Florida when they play in Jacksonville in 2 weeks or whatever it is, that win looks as impressive as possible. Like you want Florida to have no losses other than the Georgia game if they lose that game. You want to have you want Alabama. You either want Alabama to get 2 losses and just be done, or you want Alabama undefeated in the title game. But the thing with the SEC is hopefully it'll cannibalize itself. And the good thing about Florida winning last week is that Auburn is now Auburn now took the loss, and now they can go and try and take out Alabama, and everyone can just cheer for kick 6 redux, and Alabama get screwed in Auburn. But yeah, there's 4 undefeated SEC teams right now. That's mathematically going to be 3 this week because two of the 4 play each other. Georgia has, I don't even know if Georgia plays this week or if they have some non-entity.
South Carolina.
So they have a non-entity. Okay, good to know. If you want to just eliminate teams out of the playoff, you're cheering for Alabama to lose this week at A&M, and you're looking for LSU to lose to Florida this week because, frankly, there's no way Florida is as good as LSU, and so you just want to get rid of LSU out of the picture as much as humanly possible. Create just carnage among carnage in the SEC West, and pray to God that everybody comes out of there with 1 loss and nobody has a better resume than Notre Dame.
Yeah, perfectly said. Do you think that the Alabama-LSU game in a few weeks is going to have a huge impact do you think one of them beating the other matters more?
I mean, LSU is just the ideal situation is Florida beats LSU this week and then LSU beats Alabama the week after. And you just get carnage upon carnage, and everyone can get a loss, and maybe everybody gets 2. But I mean, that would rely on LSU beating Alabama, and that just doesn't happen. So, the thing that should worry Notre Dame fans is 2 SEC teams coming in. Whoever wins is getting in. But the thing is that if you assume Clemson goes undefeated because their schedule is just useless, you assume 1 SEC spot, You're starting to get to the point where you need losses to start coming, and so you don't want a second SEC team in contention, and you don't want the Big 12 getting a team.
Yep.
Just the number of viable options over which Notre Dame is sort of in the same general tier is just lessened, so the committee has less opportunity to do dumb things.
Yeah, and I think too, the thing that scares me the most is an 11-1 Alabama that doesn't get into the title game, but can then unseed Notre Dame for the 4th seed or something. So if Alabama, because Alabama has a decent schedule this year. So I would ideally want Alabama to get into that title game with a loss and then get a second loss to Georgia, or Alabama to get 2 losses before that title game.
How do you still hope Alabama has 6 losses before that game?
Well, the dream is A&M beats Alabama this week. LSU beats Alabama beats LSU, and then Auburn beats Alabama. And then Alabama's 2 loss and not going anywhere. And then it's just like Auburn or LSU, both of whom would get waxed by Georgia. So that's fun.
Yeah, that's fair. Do you think the Gators have a shot this year in the playoff?
Probably not. We'll be competitive. We'll be like vaguely competitive. The problem is that Georgia's like good, and so generally the way that Florida has had like their backdoor path in is go like 11-1, and then or like you can line the schedule up. They go 11-1. They get into the title game, and then they win as like 13-point dogs. But like they can't afford to lose to Georgia this year, and that game terrifies me as a Gators fan.
Yeah, that's a big one. Is that the what do they call that? Is that the
I don't remember.
Yeah, they have a name for that rivalry. It's a good one. They played in a neutral site game. But
at the Jaguar Stadium every year.
Oh yeah. Well, thank you for that recap, Evan. I know our listeners will really appreciate having a different perspective come in. I think now we'll move on to the opponents because I think we want the bulk of this to be on USC because it is rivalry week. So just to give you guys all a recap, because I know you don't want to have to see how Michigan did. Nobody wants to look at that, so I'll do that for you. Michigan beat a ranked Iowa at home in Ann Arbor, 10-3. Because the Big Ten is the worst thing to ever happen to football. I don't know who wants to watch that, but they should be really tested for insanity. Michigan now plays Illinois at home, and then they go to Penn State the week before Notre Dame, which really pisses me off because they could have a second loss, and that win, if we get it in Ann Arbor, would look a little less impressive. But I know this is hard for you guys, but hold your nose and keep cheering for Michigan to win until that Notre Dame game because they can do us a lot of help in terms of the resume. Next was a game against two of our opponents. Louisville beat Boston College 41-39, which makes our 18-point win at Louisville look really good if they actually start doing some damage and can become a bowl team. They go now to 3-2. Boston College is 3-3. Boston College has now lost 2 games really, really close. So keep an eye on for that because we all know how the Eagles like to play us when we have hopes on the line. Next, we go to a huge one for us in terms of just staying 500. Virginia Tech beat Miami 42-35 to go 3-2 in the year. Getting as many bowl-eligible teams as you can on the schedule is huge. So every little thing like that helps Notre Dame. And along those lines, Navy beat Air Force 34-25. Navy's now 3-1. Again, if we can get a Navy team that's in a bowl position, and if not, maybe even in a ranked position, that would be absolutely fantastic. Georgia beat Tennessee handedly, 43-14. To be fair, everyone has beaten Tennessee handedly. Even if they didn't play Tennessee, they've beaten Tennessee handedly. That's just kind of where they are as a program. It was actually a fantastic week for Notre Dame in terms of opponents. The only thing that hurt was Duke lost to Pitt 33-30. We don't play Pitt this year. I know that confuses people because it seems like we do every goddamn year, and they always play us tough. But Duke lost that one, so Duke's 3-2 on the year. Again, as long as Duke kind of wins 8 games, we'd be happy with that. And lastly, the huge upset: Stanford beat Washington at home in Palo Alto, 23-13. The Cardinal, the big tree of theirs, they now go 3-3, and now we're looking at a situation where Stanford could do some damage, and Stanford could perhaps turn this season around and become a decent team by the end of it. So that's our opponent outlook. Do you guys have any comments on that at all?
Hilarious that Stanford has potentially a chance to still win the Pac-12 North.
Pac-12 is fairly Power 5 conference.
I follow a lot of Washington football fans, and oh boy, was that a fun meltdown on Saturday night. They were all freaking out when they lost, and I watched the majority of that game. Like, I have no idea how Stanford won that game, but good for them.
Yeah, considering how awful they've been this year too. But yeah, I think that should bring us to the reason you're all tuning in. It is rivalry week. It is the Southern California Trojans and the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. We brought Evan onto this show for a reason. He's been asking ever since we got the podcast started to come on for USC week because he has A good story about USC, one game we watched together. So, Evan, I'm going to let you tell our listeners your story about the Trojans.
So Dylan and I are friends from university, and I know he's a big Notre Dame fan, and so I've been wanting to watch games with him at various points. And his thing was always he didn't want me to watch a rivalry game with him and then have Notre Dame lose because I would be a bad luck charm. But he finally relented and let me watch the 2017 Notre Dame USC game with him at his apartment in downtown Ottawa. So we're very excited. We spend we're hanging out most of the day, whatever. We get there, and then the game's all good. Notre Dame goes 3 and out, does nothing with the ball on the first drive. They punt, and USC has the ball like on their own 45, like midfield area.
And who was quarterback, just so everyone could know?
We'll get there in a second. Don't worry.
Okay.
But I had been very boastful that Notre Dame was free money on the gambling line. They were going to win by 30, and Dylan didn't believe me for a second. This is USC quarterback Sam Darnold, and I thought Darnold was crap. I still do. The Jets suck. He sucks. And so I'm like, no, don't worry, dude. Don't worry. Darnold will throw a pick right now. It'll be fine. Whatever. First play coming out of the thing, there's a USC drops back, whatever. There's a fumble. Neither Dylan or I have ever seen this fumble. We don't know that it happened. But hilariously, they call a fumble on the first play after I declared that he was going to throw an interception. Notre Dame takes the ball. They march downfield. They score a touchdown. Same drive. Everything's good. They end up winning by some gargantuan score. I don't remember.
42-14.
My alcohol more than the game by the third quarter. But yeah, no, I've always just loved the fact that Dylan was so intent that like things needed to go well. He was starting to panic. I'm like, don't worry, dude. It's fine. Darnold's going to throw them out of the game. And he fumbles, and we take it right down, score, and we blow them out. And that's exactly what's going to happen this week.
I love it. That's it's so funny you bring up the point that he fumbled it and we haven't seen it. I don't know if people remember the 2017 game and the play Evan's talking about. It's right at the start of the game. But apparently USC fumbled the snap and we recovered it. I think they fumbled it, but nobody had ever seen a recovery. There's definitely no recovery evidence on video anywhere. Like that was definitely the referees just thought we had it and called it Notre Dame ball, and which completely changed the entire game because then Notre Dame went on to blow them out, like you said. So yeah, thanks for coming on. That was the first game I think Evan and I ever watched together because I'm a crazy person and I will kick you out if we're starting to play bad. So he was good luck for that game. Unfortunately, he was there for Miami not too long afterwards. Yeah.
No, we don't. I don't accept that reality. I don't.
Nobody does.
That memory of events.
That's the one game Miami Hurricanes have won that has been relevant in about 10 years. Anyway. So that should lead us into the big one. It's rivalry week. I can't say that enough. This is the game every year. I know it's been overlooked this year because with Georgia on the schedule, but it's the Trojans and the Fighting Irish, and we don't like each other. I'll give you a quick tale of the tape, and then Steve, I'm going to let you get your thoughts in. Just looking at some basic USC stuff here. They went 5-7 last year, 4-5 in the Pac-12. Of course, we played them in the Coliseum to end the season, which should be the game every year. It should be at South Bend and at LA on Thanksgiving weekend in the US. But whatever, that's a side tangent. It was a game that we didn't really play too well in, so I don't really have fond memories of it. But nonetheless, USC is 3-2 this year. What's important to note is that they are 3-0 at home and 0-2 on the road, with losses coming to BYU in overtime, which was hilarious, but now kind of shot ourselves in the foot there, and a loss to Washington, 14-point loss on the road. In terms of just basic ESPN efficiency stats, because that's the metric I like to give you guys to look at before the game, USC is 21st in college football offensively. Notre Dame is 20th, so we have a very close offensive efficiency matchup. That'll be interesting to see how the quarterback injuries play out, and I'll definitely let Evan take that one in a minute. Defensively, USC is 51st in efficiency in college football. That is not too good. Notre Dame, on the other hand, is 6th. So we have a really huge advantage there in terms of head-to-head. And overall, USC is 31st. In terms of efficiency, Notre Dame is 9th. And I would like to point out that Virginia is 27th. So that should give you a frame of reference where USC is efficiency-wise. And lastly, our advanced metric SP+, the Trojans are 29th in college football, and the Irish are 13th. That's up 9 spots from last week. So that's pretty much the primer statistically. I'm going to let you guys kind of give your thoughts on the game.
Steve, why don't you go? Because I've talked too much recently.
Yeah. So in regards to, I guess a preview, Amon-Ra St. Brown is absolutely legit. I mean, their entire receiving core is pretty nasty, but they are down to, forgive me if I'm wrong here, they're down to like their third string QB, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
Matt Fink. I have thoughts on Matt Fink in a minute, so we can. I can give them now if you want, or we can save them for when I go, because I've watched a lot of the 2 games he's played in.
Nice. Take a minute. Yeah.
He's not good. He's actively bad. He is actively bad at throwing the football thing. He just takes shots, and a couple of times that receiving core bails him out, but he's not very good. He doesn't have enough. He doesn't have enough performances to qualify under the QBR restrictions. But he's like the 50th best quarterback in the country if you use the unqualified list. He's not very good. He got bailed out by his receivers a bunch against Utah, and he was just like actively bad against Washington. And Washington's secondary is quite good. I would say the Notre Dame secondary is at least as good as the UW one, and he didn't have a lot of pressure on him, and he's going to have a boatload of it this week. Matt Fink, not very good at quarterbacking.
Well, that's promising then. I mean, I don't know too much about the Trojans. I mean, when we started the podcast at the beginning of this year, or this year's podcast, we did kick off with a quick preview, and we were very skeptical of USC even coming into South Bend in October with a win on their schedule.
I cursed them. That's on me, guys. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean they have pulled off like some decent quality victories, I suppose, but at the end of the day, I mean they've given up quite a few points to some lesser teams, specifically like BYU. Yeah, I mean, third string QB, they do have great wide receivers, but how much is that going to matter against our inferior secondary with superior secondary with an absolutely crushing and ridiculous pass rush. So the expectation is clearly to win. I mean, the expectation for Notre Dame is to compete for national championships, and we're not going to do so by losing a fucking game to an unranked USC team that is just completely down and totally rebuilding. Now, do they have talent on the roster? Yes, obviously so. They have a couple of 4 and 5 stars scattered throughout because it is USC. They're always going to, get their recruits, just like Texas, just like LSU, just like a lot of these big time programs, and even Miami. But at the end of the day, that like there are just some gap years that are experienced by a lot of programs, and that's something that USC is currently experiencing. They're still in one of those gap years where they have the talent at a lot of positions, but in terms of depth and in terms of coaching, Helton is pretty shitty. but it's not like he's been put in an easy position either, because there's been a bunch of injuries and a whole bunch of a shit show mess. So I mean, the program is basically in disarray at the moment. So it feels good because I hate USC. Like, screw them. And yeah, I mean, I think it's probably going to be a little bit tighter because, USC is probably going to come out scripted, and hopefully, our guys can start blowing up their script pretty early and making sure that they can't settle into a groove, because with these receivers, if you do settle into a groove, it can become problematic. But all things considered, I'm confident in a win. There's no reason we shouldn't win, but there's a reason that we play the game on Sundays and not on Saturdays and not on paper. So This week should be all about focus and just execution, which I mean every week should especially be. But when it comes down to a rivalry week, when there's a little bit extra boiling blood, the last thing we can use is just some stupid penalties or some guys that are too fired up and making some dumb mistakes.
Yeah, fair point. If I can get in a few points before Evan starts giving off his scouting report, which I'm sure has worked really hard on. I'd like to point out that apparently the weather is going to be really nice until Saturday, and then it's going to drop to freezing.
Yeah, that is hilarious. That it's going to be like 70 all week and then like 40 on Saturday.
That's good. That's I mean, obviously those Southern Cal kids in the Pac-12 don't really play any tough games in terms of weather. Also, I'd like to point out, did you guys see Brian Kelly go full Lou Holtz this week?
I did. I missed that, unfortunately.
I missed it as well.
Okay, this is amazing. Lou Holtz has a reputation for being back in the day just outrageous when it comes to the opponents, like hyping them up to be an NFL caliber team. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't matter who we're playing, we can't beat. Like, they're really, really good. This could be a really good game. Like, we'll be playing, like, Southern Methodist or something. It'll be like, you know what? I think they have it this year. I don't know if our defense can take them. Anyway, Lou Holtz is kind of known for that. So Brian Kelly did his best Lou Holtz, and he said something along the lines of, this is the best USC defense he's ever seen in the rivalry, which, of course, prompted everybody, including Trojans fans, to laugh hilariously and hysterically. And I just wanted to kind of point that out there that Kelly, I think, is trolling them a little bit. Also, before I was going to ask this maybe next week, but it's probably best to ask this now to Steve. Obviously, everyone listening at home, USC is the rival. That is, they're the number one rival. They're the only game that matters. If we had to lose all of our rivalry except one, we're keeping Southern Cal. That being said, there's this huge thing among Notre Dame fans of which program you hate more. And I would like to ask Steve who he hates more ahead of time before this game is played, because if we lose, it could affect his answer, and if we win, it could affect his answer. So, Steve, Michigan, Southern Cal, who do you hate more?
I would go with Southern Cal. I do. I mean, and I have a special fucking hatred in my heart for Michigan. Don't get me wrong. It's just by the time that my Notre Dame fandom came into full blossoming effect was like 2004, 2005. We don't have to venture down too far. If you're a Notre Dame fan, you know what I'm talking about in regards to why I would despise them. I've never seen a single redeeming quality about the program, the school, and frankly, I just don't really like California or Los Angeles. I mean, just personal preference. I'm a Boston guy, so like, Boston, LA, like I'm just supposed to hate that city inherently. So, yeah, I mean, I just have no goodwill whatsoever, with the exception of two players in the history of the entire program. One being Troy Polamalu, the other being Juju Smith-Schuster as a Steelers fan. Other than that, everything about USC can go screw. I also hate Michigan with a fiery passion, and in the late 2010s, that was a fucking problem for me as well. But yeah, I would definitely say 1 USC, 2 Michigan.
All right. I'm actually going to disagree here. I started watching football in the 2010s, and there's nothing I hate more than Michigan football. Of course, USC is the rival. That's the game I care about, but I kind of hope the entire state of Michigan burns. And that's not fair to Michigan State and to the other Michigan schools, but God damn, has Michigan done so much evil, where it's definitely deserved. I just hate the Wolverines so much. I kind of almost romanticize USC in the way where I definitely don't like them, but I kind of like the rivalry. I like the idea of these two being the two biggest and historic schools, programs in college football, duking it out. So I kind of like that element of USC, that they're very historic too. But I mean, there's no putting any other way. We don't like both of them. But I was just curious out there. I'd like to see the listeners kind of give us a shout on who they hate more between those two schools, because I would imagine it's only those two schools you would hate. So yeah, let us know. And now I'm going to let Evan get into his hard work on Southern Cal.
They're bad. That's the short version of this. The long version of this is They are a finesse team. Their their offense is, especially with Matt Fink, like it takes a long time to get their offense going, and they're not going to have time this week. It's a lot of deep passes, which you need time to let the routes develop, and they're just not going to have it. Fink wasn't particularly good against Washington. Washington has a pretty good defensive line. They got some pressure, and they just didn't have it. The receivers are good, but the receivers can only do so much if you're being thrown a hospital pass. It's just how this works. You can't always make a play out of nothing if you have a bad quarterback. And I mean, it's not necessarily a sort of fault of USC. They're on their last scholarship quarterback, but that's what happens when you lose two quarterbacks in 5 games. But the thing that I'm actually really excited about is USC's defense is bad. I don't understand what Brian Kelly was saying because Jacob Eason, the UW quarterback, like he's not great. He was like actively bad last week at Stanford, and the USC game was the best game he's ever played. It was just it was a dissection of that offense. The UW running game was effective, and it's not, generally speaking, pretty effective. I think this is going to be a big game. I think Claypool is going to beast. I think you're going to see a lot of really effective passing. I don't think Book is going to have too many problems with Happy Feet. I think the offensive line is really good against Bowling Green, and I think they'll continue to be good against USC. Eason did have a lot of time in the pocket in the UW game, and I think the Book will have similarly good pocket to work in, and I don't think he'll have to be doing his Happy Feet scrambling nonsense like he was doing in the first few games of the year, especially on third downs, as you guys so brilliantly figured out last week. I don't think USC is very good. Like they have essentially a fluke win, but they weren't particularly good against Fresno State to start the season. They were actively bad against UW. Like when they play actual quality competition, they lose, and they don't lose particularly closely. And I think you're going to see that this week. I think Book has a good game. I think the running game is going to be as efficient, if not more efficient, than it was against Bowling Green this week. I think something in the 6-7 yards per carry range is going to be really good, and should be there given the holes in the USC run defense. And I think it's going to be a very solid, balanced offensive attack. And I just think that USC is very beatable.
Yeah, well said. I would definitely appreciate that because we haven't caught too many Southern Cal games. I've seen them play parts of BYU and parts of Utah, and even parts of Fresno, actually. I've seen USC play a fair amount, actually. But I haven't done anything too in-depth on them. They're a team I don't really enjoy watching too much. I don't know. It's that rivalry thing. I don't like to see USC do well, but at the same time, you kind of like to see how they play. So thank you for at least providing some actual thoughtful analysis that me and Steve would totally forget. Just pure hatred.
The one thing you were saying, the weather is not going to be particularly good in Notre Dame on Saturday. Very bad USC. Very bad for long passing, for deep passing attacks.
Absolutely.
Weather neutral, I don't think it's going to be good. Weather not being great, I think that's even better for Notre Dame, given the sort of like finesse style that the Trojans play.
Yeah, and you got to consider, too, it's a night game in South Bend, and Notre Dame does not lose night games to rivals in South Bend, which kind of leads me to something I'd like to ask you guys. A little gimmick Notre Dame's doing this week is the Irish wear green out. We saw that with Michigan at the home opener last year, which was fantastic. Everything looked beautiful. Steve, what do you think about it? Do you think it's going to work out as much? Do you think they had enough time to get people to wear green for the game? Because Michigan, it was kind of hyped up all summer. We're going to wear green. Do you think the fans are going to actually turn out in green this year?
Yeah, and I think it's very easy for people, to dig into their Notre Dame archives or Notre Dame gear and to find something green, or you can always buy something for and not a reasonable price. But so from the crowd standpoint, I think they'll pretty much do a good job, and I'm pretty sure that the student section, they usually get T-shirts. Yeah, so I mean I'm confident that we will green it out, and that's cool. The only thing I don't like is don't green out the stadium if we're not going to wear the Kelly green jerseys. So so I don't know if we're going to. We're probably not going to. And the last time we wore the Kelly greens, we had blue numbers, which was like hideous. Like keep the gold numbers. Like, what are we doing? So yeah, I mean,
and I think the Notre Dame the media account, whenever they say like Irish wear green, it's in that blue font. So if they do wear the green, I'm worried they're going to go back with that one.
Yeah, and it's just gross. I mean, just for the love of God, understand the clash of colors here and what your color scheme is. So
Notre Dame fans don't understand this. We wear like 8 different colors to a game, which is why you can never see us.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm confident that the Irish eyes are the Irish Army is going to be able to mobilize and green out, but for me, it's just kind of like, well, what's the point of doing it if we're not going to wear the Kelly greens with the gold jerseys, but gold trim rather. So that's my thoughts. I mean, if there's any, we are growing at a pretty rapid pace, and it's great, and I love doing this on a weekly basis. If there's any way that we can imbue on the university, Jack Swarbrick and Coach Kelly and anyone in that office, if you guys can just like have the understanding that green and blue was absolutely hideous, and please make a change for the love of God, I will gladly be a consultant for you guys for the mere cost of $55,000.
Fair enough. I've always wanted them to wear green, and it was kind of disappointing when that was the green they brought out finally. They've done green out twice in my viewing time as a Notre Dame fan. Oklahoma in 2013, which did not work out at all because Oklahoma came in red, and half the stadium didn't care. And then last year, Michigan worked beautifully, especially at night under the lights. I think if you're serious about this, you're going to have to give everybody in the crowd some green merch or something. Don't be cheap, Notre Dame. Give them a towel. Yeah. Michigan. Kind of not wrapping this up right away, but to give everybody a little bit of a primer on this series, because this is a great rivalry game. This is our 91st matchup against the USC Trojans. All-time, Notre Dame leads the series, 48 wins, 37 losses, and 5 draws. That's 11-win lead. However, with all the vacated stuff, which we do not recognize on this podcast, but if you go on Wikipedia, what you will see is 46 wins for Notre Dame, 36 losses, and 5 draws. That's because the Bush Push year was vacated, and then 2 of Notre Dame's wins recently have been vacated. Again, that's bullshit. The real all-time record's 48, 37, and 5. Which goes to show if you're playing one of the most historic programs year in and year out, and you have an 11-point win in the series, I think you're maybe the best program, at least around. So just kind of recently, Notre Dame has not won 3 straight against USC since 1999 to 2001. We would have that opportunity on Saturday to make it 3. So that goes to show how we haven't had sustained success in this series, because obviously in the early 2000s, USC dominated. However, in the last 10, Notre Dame is 6-4 against Southern Cal. They've kind of turned that back into our favor. In the last 5, we're 3-2. Our 2 losses were in just brutal years where we were kind of decimated with injuries before we got to the game. And we haven't lost at home to USC since 2011. And that was one of Notre Dame's cringy years right before they made that title run. So series-wise, this is turning back in the favor of the Irish the way it should be. We make that claim to be the greatest program ever, and when you have an 11 lead over USC, that kind of should cement that. So obviously building on that would be important. Kelly has a very good record against USC, especially at home. So these are a lot of just kind of recent history factors to throw in there. Also, this rivalry is awesome. I feel like that kind of gets lost in the grand scheme of college football sometimes because it's not always played on Thanksgiving weekend. But it is truly one of the most historic. Notre Dame and USC for the longest time were the 2 greatest. I mean, they had the Ohio State Michigan's like a 9-year war or something like that. USC and Notre Dame had like an 11-year war where like 4 national championships were won. versus like Michigan and Ohio State didn't win any in that time. But Notre Dame and USC have always been playing for that championship game. So this is a really awesome rivalry. It's, of course, not a conference rivalry. It's not geographic. It's just awesome. It's just two great programs kind of playing since the dawn of time.
Based off coaches' wives that wanted to travel.
Pretty much, and boy, did it ever work out. And something I'd like to point out as well is this is actually has made pop culture before. This is just kind of a tidbit information. But in the movie Die Hard, the security guard is watching Notre Dame USC on TV. And in The Godfather Part 2, there is a scene in the movie where one of the characters is watching Notre Dame play USC. So I thought that would kind of be some neat information to kind of share with you guys to show that this rivalry means something. It's a big game, and it's something that we should be very proud of. So we'll get into score predictions for the game. Evan, I'll let you go first.
What's the spread this week? It's Notre Dame favored by something. I don't know.
I thought I saw 11.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I was just wondering if it had moved. Notre Dame 45, USC 9.
Oh, wow. Big one.
I really, really don't like this USC team.
Fair enough. Steve?
34-10.
Nice. So you guys are going with big blowouts there. I'm going to go along with that. I'm going to have it 38-20. Notre Dame beats USC. I think this game maybe kind of hangs close for a little while, but I think Notre Dame pulls ahead quite significantly, and by the end of it, it's just kind of a blowout. Everybody's happy. USC will drop to 3-3, although it is a loss they can take because the Pac-12 South is still an option for them. Losing to Notre Dame doesn't affect that, so we're going to have to unfortunately root for the Trojans after this game. But as far as I'm concerned, we're going to blow them out. We're a better team. We're a better program. We're a way better fan base, and I think it's going to all show. I think we're going to have a great atmosphere. We're going to wear some green, and we're going to kick some ass. So before we completely end this podcast, which I'm now dubbing Part 1 of SCUM, of course, Part 2 will be the Michigan week, I would like to play a game that maybe me and Steve can start competing in this year, but I'll include Evan, where I'm going to give you guys 5 games from this week, and I just want you to pick the winner of the game. We don't really need to preview it or anything, but just kind of what your thoughts are and who you think is going to win to kind of see how everyone's skills are. So, is everybody ready?
Yes.
Ready.
Also, just for the record, I've already told Dylan that I have guesses at what 3 of the 5 games are, and I am 1,000% correct that the 3 that I thought were going to be here are on this list.
Well, you think, but I have not disclosed it with anybody. Also, if you're new to our podcast, we previously play a lot of games. Ask a Canadian might make a comeback someday. So we like to kind of be lighthearted here. So Steve, Evan, Oklahoma, Texas, the Red River rivalry, showdown, shootout, whatever they keep changing that name to. It's a great rivalry. It's a historic one between two great programs. At a neutral site game, I believe, at the Cotton Bowl. So who do you got to win and maybe why?
Texas, because Oklahoma always, when Oklahoma is good, they always are supposed to win the Red River rivalry, and then they don't. When Texas is good, they're supposed to win the Red River rivalry, and they don't. The team that you don't expect to win this game always wins this game. Texas are substantial underdogs. They're winning it right. Take the Longhorns.
Fair point. Steve?
Yeah, just Texas. I mean, I think Oklahoma's just overrated. I think their schedule's shit. I don't think they play anyone. At the very least, Texas is battle tested against LSU, even though they did lose. But I mean, they held in tight. Sam Ehlinger is a hell of a fucking quarterback, and he's an absolute animal running the ball too. So, I mean, yeah, Jalen Hurts, you had a cool run against, Alabama A&T Technical School of the South with the blinds, and that was fun. but now you're going to play an actual defense with an actual secondary, and I don't think it's going to be as simple as it has been for him. So that's my reason.
Interesting. I think we're all in agreement here. I'd taken Texas too. Maybe it's sort of hope because Oklahoma losing again would help the process of eliminating the Big 12. I think Texas has a better defense. At least they did last year. So I feel like Oklahoma might run into that. But honestly, this is going to be a hell of a game. It's going to be a huge shootout. You never know who's going to win this game. That's been one of the more fun games to watch, as Evan has mentioned. So fair enough. We're all in agreement on Texas. Next, we're going to have the Alabama Crimson Tide going to Texas A&M. They are 16.5-point favorites. What do you think?
I'm going to just be boring and chalk here, Alabama. I don't think they cover the 16.5, but I think they do win. A&M is always the team that everybody thinks should be good, but unless Johnny Manziel is walking through that door, I'm taking the Crimson Tide.
Fair enough. Steve?
Yeah, I'm boring too. This is probably a 24-point Alabama victory, unfortunately.
Yeah, I know. I think we keep getting our hopes up for Texas A&M, and it just doesn't come through. I also took Alabama there. The Crimson Tide, unfortunately, I think are going to win that game. But who knows? Maybe we can get a big upset. We haven't had a big upset yet in college football, so maybe that'll be the one. Next, I got the Michigan State Spartans going to Wisconsin, who's 10.5-point favorites. Who do you got and why?
I'll just keep going first. Michigan State. Wisconsin is overrated because they beat the ever-living tar out of Michigan, but Michigan's not very good, so that's not as impressive a victory as people would want to make it seem. I think Michigan State's got a really good defense. Offense is a little suspect, but I don't necessarily think that Wisconsin's the team that's gonna take advantage of that. I'm taking the Spartans to win and obviously cover the 10.5.
Yeah, the heart says the Spartans, the mind says the Badgers. I would love to see Michigan State pull this off. I have no animus against Michigan State. Even I don't particularly like them because they are a rival, although we haven't played in quite some time. But it would also create quite the carnage in the Big Ten, which it all in turn helps us eventually. So. Rooting for Michigan State, but I think Wisconsin wins, unfortunately.
Fair enough. I'm kind of with you, Steve, there too. I think Wisconsin is going to pull this off because I was going to take Michigan State, but they disappointed against Ohio State, so I don't know if they will be able to go into Wisconsin and kind of hold that game close. I do think they will cover in the end, so any gamblers out there, I think Michigan State covers. I do think Wisconsin is overrated, like Evan said, but I just don't think Michigan State's good enough this year to get that upset. But speaking of another Big Ten game that could be an upset, we're moving on to Penn State going on the road to Iowa. That's another one that could have big implications on the playoff. What do you guys think?
Penn State, Iowa are god-awful. They are terrible. They are useless. They are the worst. Penn State in a rout.
Yeah, I would say Penn State by at least 14. I mean, this might be tight just because Kinnick Stadium's a little bit tricky to play in, and Iowa somehow finds a way to play good in big games for the most part, even though they're mainly 3-star prospects. But I don't see it. This is just going to be a Penn State victory.
I'm taking Iowa. Every year, Iowa tends to upset somebody in the Big Ten, and I think this year it's going to be Penn State. It's a game in Iowa. That's one of the factors. One of the factors, and I swear to you, I actually looked up the time of kickoff because I think that could be a real important factor. And it's a 7:30 kickoff, and I think just crowds are better when it's 7:30. When it's a night game in your home barn. So I'm taking Iowa to kind of sneak out a real garbage game there. Although it'll probably be an interesting one. But yeah, I think that would help us out for sure. Getting Penn State out of the way would be nice as well, especially for Michigan. I hate that I even had to say that. But moving on to the big one, College game day. The Florida Gators are going to Baton Rouge to play the LSU Tigers. Evan, the Gators fan, who do you got?
What do you think? What do you think I'm going to do the week after we just went as underdogs at home to Auburn and we kicked their tiny little Alabama Keisters back to Alabama? We're going to go into Baton Rouge. We're going to do what we did last time we went to Baton Rouge. We are going to win the damn game on the field. Gators.
Fair enough. That gave me confidence. I almost just ran through the wall. Steve?
Now this is the hardest one to pick. And again, this would be me rooting for Florida, but in my mind, it's saying that LSU is going to come out at home just because it is a home game for LSU. I don't like LSU. I don't like them at all. I've pretty much disliked them in their entirety since 2006. Yeah, so this is easily the hardest one. And what if there's a line that's above 4.5? Then I think you got to hammer the under on that. Where hammer the Gators on that as dogs.
The last time I saw the line, it was north of 10.
13 and a half is what I got.
I think this is probably a field goal game. But
yeah, gambling corner, Texas and the points, Gators and the points, and Michigan State and the points are all very solid plays.
That's pretty much my thoughts. Is that it's going to be tight. I think LSU edges out, but I don't want to see it.
Yeah, I think I'm in agreement with you too. As much as I want to see the Gators win for Evan's sake and for our own, I think LSU has something cooking this year. I wouldn't sleep on the Gators. I think this game could go either way. I think it could turn into a blowout too. I think if LSU can move the ball and Florida can't keep up, that it could turn into a blowout. But I also think Florida could totally go in there and just shut everything down because LSU does not have a good defense this year. I am going to take LSU, but I think Florida does cover. I think it'll be a good loss for Florida. And it'll kind of keep them around if they can beat Georgia. But overall, we're in agreement with most of them. Pretty much that's it. If you guys at home want to keep score, play along with us and see which one of us is the best at predicting college football, because we were very awful in the bowl season. Steve, myself, and our other co-host, P. Wagon, who's on sabbatical, we all lost to my girlfriend who doesn't know anything about college football. So we're not very great at this, but hopefully we're improving. Any last words, guys, before we wrap this up?
Evan.
Go Notre Dame. Go Florida. Please, God, Notre Dame, win by a lot, because I'm definitely betting on you, minus whatever the spread is right now. That's really the extent of my commentary. Just win big. I can't deal with depressed Dylan in the second quarter if they're down 12. I just can't do it.
And that would be me right there along with them. Well, I mean, my thoughts here, Evan, pleasure meeting you. Thanks so much for coming on. You were great. Had a lot of awesome insight here and definitely always appreciate that. I hate USC and I hope we blow them out by 45 and hopefully carnage in every single, conference out there with some big matchups coming up this week, and pretty much just go Irish and please, for the love of God, win this fucking game.
Well said. Again, thanks Evan for coming on. For all of you guys listening at home, we're growing exponentially. We can't thank you enough. Follow us on Horsemen Pod on Twitter. Feel free to reach out to us. We love the fan engagement. We love hearing from you guys. Definitely a big shout out to Herb Smith, one of the best in the business. All I have to say is don't just beat SC, bury SC. Go Irish.